How did you first learn how to ride a bike? Did you just kind of look around and say, oh, this looks like fun, and pick up a bike and start running? Of course not. Someone had to teach you. A parent, a relative, or just a friend. How did you first learn how to read? Again, did you just, oh, look, these books are great, I'm going to start reading them? No, you had to learn. People read to you as a young child, and then you went to school, and your teachers taught you to read. When you first start a job, does the employer just say, well, here's your desk, whatever you want to do, go for it? Of course not. A good employer shows you exactly what they want you to do, and then they pay you to repeat that process over and over so that they can go and do something else. And what these people are, for purposes of this video, I'm going to call mentors. People with experience who take an interest in you and help you navigate your way through the world and maximize your success. And you can use mentors in your Homebrew D&D campaign. They can help players, whether they are beginners or experts, to navigate their way through your world and maximize their fun. And I'm going to show you how. Hello again, gang. KR King here, helping you homebrew your own D&D campaign. Well, those of you who see my channel, as you can see, I'm in yet another spot here. I've had to move to another location. I'm still working on, getting my house and my new studio, but here we go. So we're talking about mentors. And I think they help your campaign in a number of different ways. The first thing is they lend flavor and verisimilitude to your campaign, because mentors are part of a player character's background, their life before they started the campaign. So not only can they fill in those details of what the character was doing, but then they also add information going forward. This mentor has had experience in the world. They know things that, especially low-level players wouldn't know. Another great thing that mentors can do is act as a surrogate for the GM. You want your players to go out and explore the world. It's a sandbox campaign to figure things out on their own. But sometimes, they can't figure out some information, or they've missed some clues, and they need something that isn't, you're not just going to hand it to them out of the air. But a mentor, by definition, has been around the block. They can provide information to the players that, because they have a mentor relationship, the players can trust. They know it's going to be accurate about places to go, people to see, what areas to avoid. And if a mentor gets in trouble and needs assistance, the mentee, the player character, has an emotional stake in helping them out. So if you have a fighter with a soldier background who, the captain of his city guard when he was a young soldier who saved his life countless times, has now in his retirement been robbed of his life savings, that character has a very strong interest to go and figure out who stole the money and to get it back. And mentors reduce the need to be using skill checks all the time in order for the players to figure things out. Nothing against skill checks, and of course you as the GM, you decide when you want to make them, but when your players discover something or learn about something, you can see when they're angling for an arcana or a history check. And the thing about making die rolls, there's an arbitrary nature to this. It kind of forces your hand sometimes as a GM. Let's say the players find an amulet and it has all this very intricate carvings and they don't know what it's about. And in fact, it is the first clue that you're giving out about some lost civilization that no one knows about. So they, want to make let's say a history check. And, you're sitting there thinking, well, no one knows about this. So what do you make it, like a DC 30? Well, the problem with that is, even if you have a character with a history proficiency, even if it's high and another character helps out to give it advantage, are they going to really roll a 30? So you say, well, I'll make it a DC 20. Well, suppose they roll a 1. Now, they're going to just go, oh, I don't know what this is. Maybe they put it away. And here's this adventure hook you have. And because of an arbitrary die roll, nothing happens. But this is where a mentor can come into play, because instead of some arbitrary die roll, you have an NPC with specialized information and much longer experience who can provide the players with information about this item. If you had a player with a sage background and they worked at some library with a very famous scholar, and they bring this item back, they might be able to say, looking through their piles of manuscripts, they find something, or they know someone else at another library or some wizard who might have information on this. Now you have an adventure hook, and it came in a realistic and logical way. All right, so where are you going to get mentors? Well, you're going to role play this NPC, and for that reason, I would say to put a little distance between the player character and their mentor. Because, in real life, the strongest mentors we have are our parents. I hear myself saying things my father used to say, like, 10 times a day. And believe me, if you're old, you'll know exactly what I mean. If you're younger, just look at those Geico commercials about becoming your parents, because it's true. But I wouldn't use parents as an NPC, mentor, for that very same reason, the closeness, because you don't know necessarily what your player character's relationship with their parents is, whether good, bad, or non-existent. And even if you say, well, it's a game, there's distance right there, you know what? I would just be more cautious. I would just remove that a little bit. Because all of us carry a lot more emotional baggage from our parents than we do, a teacher, a coworker, or even a friend. But sometimes a player's background decisions can make it logical that their parents might be a part of the story. Let's say you have a character, she says, I want to be the daughter of the king. Well, the king is a big part of the world, is going to have to be role-played. And the other thing is when the other player characters find out, oh my gosh, your father's the king, well, we need to talk to him, information, maybe we can do missions for him, this is great. Even if you allow this, I would keep the king's role in your campaign to be a minimum. Because unless you're running an all-nobles campaign, which is actually kind of an interesting idea, that player character is going to have to be running with other players that have backgrounds of much more modest means. But that provides you as a GM with a tool in order to reduce the king's role. You're going to say, look, if you're going to take that background, but you're running with these player characters of much more low status, there has to be some reason. You're estranged from your family. Perhaps the act of being an adventurer has told them, we don't want anything to do with you. You don't have to make it a huge, emotional issue, but you're just establishing something. Look, you want to be this character, you want to run with these players. Dad is not going to be a big part of the campaign. All right, so we're moving it a little bit away from the player character. Where do you find the mentor? I would use background or class. And if you're using Tasha's Cauldron rules, then you could use the patron rules, but of course that's going to be a group mentor, not an individual one. All right, so you might say, well, some backgrounds lend themselves better to mentor than others. For instance, the acolyte or the sage, both have the acolyte at a temple or the sage at a library. That's obvious place for a more experienced person there to provide information. Criminals and soldiers, they have to learn their craft from someone. So obviously they do this in an army or with a gang of criminals. Same thing with, guild artisans or entertainers. Urchins usually form a gang of some kind. Even hermits, they say they're sometimes at a monastery or something, there's going to be someone there. So all of these have, you say outlander, well, there's no possibility. They wander the wilds by themselves, but it's possible they might meet some wandering druid out there or a ranger or something. Now, the thing about it is, depending on the background, you do have an issue of how often do you meet them. The druid that wanders the wilds, how often is the outlander going to be able to communicate with them? So that is one limitation. And as I said, this mentor relationship began before the player was running in the campaign. Whether it's before first level, if you're starting at third or fifth or even seventh, if you're starting higher than that, a player that's 15th level, their mentors, they've probably exceeded their abilities. And that's the key, is the player was at low level where a mentor could provide more experience and more knowledge to help them out. And this dovetails into thinking about a player character's class in terms of coming up with a logical mentor. So let's just suppose you have a character who is a cleric of the trickery domain, and their background is sailor. And I'm just throwing these out without thinking about this, in terms of optimizing, in terms of saying, well, what are the cross things here with this domain and this background in terms of maximizing skills or proficiencies. The point is here, you could have a mentor based on class, the cleric, the trickery domain, or the background of sailor. You don't want to use all three. Too many mentors, it's hard enough just creating one. All right, let's use a sea captain. So this player character was a sailor, and let's say they fell into piracy, whether by intention or perhaps impressed into service. And this mentor was the pirate sea captain who taught this character the tricks of the trade. And maybe this pirate captain fell into piracy also for complicated reasons. And in the course of watching how they behaved and everything, this player character found religion and became a cleric. So what are the things that this pirate captain could possess to potentially help the players? Well, obviously, they have a vast knowledge of the seas all around here and the coastline around those seas, in addition to various islands, far off lands. Also, because of their travels, they have all sorts of stories they hear and legends. This knowledge could be incredible to identify someplace on a map, to hear about stories, things that are happening, adventure hooks. If the captain is still sailing the seas, there's an opportunity there for the players to join on an expedition. But even if the captain is retired, he may have made a few enemies along the way. Let's say he's just sort of living his life out with what booty that he has left, and someone comes along and, injures him, takes the booty, perhaps kills him. Your player character is going to be highly motivated to avenge this wrong. And here's another great aspect of using mentors. As I've said in earlier videos, the creation of a homebrewed world is, a sort of organic and evolving process, because, you don't need to come up with every aspect of your world, every town and city, every adventure, every monster everywhere. No, you just start with a basic area and then build out as the players advance. And the thing is, you can use the players, the characters that they've chosen, the backgrounds, in order to influence the building of that world. So if you have a character like this, a cleric who has a pirate background, a mentor that's a pirate captain, think about, sea adventures, islands, undersea adventures, some strange mist that's moving into the coastline, or trading ships that are disappearing in a certain area, the formation of a giant whirlpool that's sucking in ships. So here you're using the mentor to add flavor and verisimilitude to your campaign. You're giving some emotional import and investment to your players when you have an adventure hook, and it's providing you with inspiration to come up with new storylines. So when your players come up with their characters, in session 0, start thinking about mentors. You don't have to do it right away, but you want to have a couple there that you can introduce them fairly early on. Again, you don't have to have one for every single player, although what happens is the other players, when they see the mentor, they see how it kind of fills out the character, they're going to go, wait a minute, I must have met these kind of people. Don't I get one? Because most of us have people in our life that have helped us out at different occasions. The thing is, in real life, of course, these people, with a teacher, or friend, or a former employer, they tend to drift away over time, but this isn't real life. It's a game. We have hyper-realism. So you could have that long-lost person that gave you the first adventuring job who shows up on your doorstep injured and dying, just like in the movies. So I hope that helps you with your campaign. Even if you have characters that are existing, if they're not too high level, you can easily introduce them. If you like what you've seen, please subscribe to my channel. I'm always looking for more. Leave some comments. I always love to hear them. I'd love to hear about you using mentors in your campaign, or some ideas that you've had since watching this video. But most importantly, keep playing D&D and tell somebody else about it.